Hello and welcome to Tammy, your story, your community. I'm so glad that you could join us today. Listen, we've got a great show planned for you. As always, I want to inspire you, ignite you, and revolutionize you to tell your unique stories. I want to thank everyone for your support, your emails, your calls. I mean, they're just coming in and I'm getting some great stories. I've got enough stories for the next few months. So keep those stories coming and you can send them to info@tammymccotry.com. Well, today on the show, first of all, there's one thing that I do want to say. I've got a vote pin on. And the reason I've got the vote pin on is because I want to remind you to vote. You know, it's our right to vote. And so again, it's a part of your story. It's a part of your community. It's a part of our story. It's a part of our community. So please get out and vote. Take someone to the polls. If you can't take them to the polls, make sure that they know about the voting process. All right? I hope I can count on you for that. On today's show, I want to talk about, and we are going to talk about, what's on your mind matters. Wow. It's all about mental health. You know, we're dealing with the pandemic. A lot of people have been sheltered in. People are working remotely. Some kids are still doing virtual for school. And so it's a hard thing right now. And so I wanted to know what happens with the mind, because I know while I was sheltered in, I had a lot of time to think about things, but then sometimes people find themselves becoming depressed. They find themselves going into a deep, deep depression and loneliness. So I called on a mental health expert, Mrs. Cynthia Washington Williams. She's a licensed professional counselor. She's nationally certified as a counselor. She's worked with everybody all over the world. I mean, she travels everywhere. And I'm just so pleased that she took time out of her busy schedule to talk to us about what's on your mind matters. So I want to introduce you right now to Mrs. Cynthia Washington Williams, our mental health expert. Hello, Mrs. Cynthia Washington Williams. How are you?
Hi, Tammy. How are you doing this evening? It's good to be here. I'm excited.
I am excited to have you on the show. Listen, we've been talking about what's on your mind matters. First of all, I just want to say, how have you been doing?
Very, very busy. Extremely busy. Since the pandemic, referrals have honestly quadrupled since March.
Yeah, well, you know, Cynthia, I do want to thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with me, because I know that you do have a busy schedule. Probably after you get off of this, you probably got another Zoom, right? Well, listen, I have a quote from you, and then we're going to talk about that. The quote says, everybody, we are working to eradicate racism. And you said, I hope we can eradicate the stigma around mental health and getting support. Cindy, that's a powerful statement. So I want to first talk about that. Let's talk about mental health and the stigma around that. And why is it so damaging to our communities right now?
First of all, because there's a lot of miseducation surrounding how you get help for mental health support. A lot of times in our community, even in the religious community, we are told the only thing that we need to do is pray about it. And I like to tell people, you can have prayer, you can have Jesus and a therapist. Not only is there a lot of miseducation about mental health, a lot of times I will just hear people say, why do we need to go to counseling? I'm not crazy. Does it mean that I'm crazy? So if we come from a family, a generation of people who are not supportive of counseling, therapy, mental health, that's what gets passed on. Mm-hmm. And so that quote is important to me, because even as we deal with a lot of the racial trauma that we see, the racial justice, the racial inequities, a lot of things that have been passed down generationally, it's just important that we realize we don't have to suffer alone, that there is help and there is support for our issues. And so before I leave this world, if we could not only eradicate racism, but eradicate the stigma surrounding mental health, I would be very, very happy.
You and me both, Cindy, as we're sitting here talking about it, Black and brown people, something that you said, this struck me when you say generational, because for the longest, and I remember in my family even, Charles just crazy, not talking about my brother, y'all, talking about how uncle did was, but they'd say, he's just uncle, Uncle so he just crazy. And don't worry about it. He's going to be okay. But then Uncle so-and-so does something that's detrimental to the family. And how do we get around that? How do we tell people that just because you have some people, maybe something in your mind that you're thinking, you may hear voices, that can be handled with medication. Talk about that, because people really need to understand that there is help, there is support.
Mm-hmm. And Tammy, I do have to say, and I don't know whether I would attribute it to the fact that I've termed it the twin pandemic, not only COVID, but also the civil and racial unrest. A lot more African Americans are calling in. Males are calling in to say, Ms. Williams, I'd like to talk to somebody. Couples are calling in. Families are calling in. So I do see us turning the corner. And one of the things that I would say to service members when I'm overseas is that it takes people of strength to raise their hands and say, you know what? I've got a lot going on. I think I'd like to talk to somebody other than friends and family. When you have something going on with your feet, you go to a podiatrist. When you have issues with your eyes, you go to the optometrist, correct?
Yes.
When you have issues with your teeth, you go to the dentist. If you're having ENT, ear, nose, and throat, you go to that specialist. I really would like for people to put mental health in the same category. If you are experiencing some sort of disorder, if you find that you are stressed, distressed, depressed, going through a phase of life, experiencing something that you are having trouble struggling with, I really want you to realize and think, I'm going to add a therapist to the list. And by all means, there have been times when I went to a doctor that I wasn't satisfied with. I didn't cease going to the doctor. Search until you find the one that fits. Search until you find the one that you can work with. Search until you find the one that you can connect with. And so I really would like for people's minds to begin, especially those whose minds have been closed.
And that's important when you say a closed mind. I want to talk a little further about grief, because you mentioned that. You mentioned depression. In this time of the pandemic, as you said, the twin pandemic, people are grieving all around the world. What do you tell your patients/clients about grief and about the grieving process?
What I tell people is, once again, I address some of those stigmas. Be strong. Don't cry. They're in a better place. They lived a full life. All of those, I don't think that we mean or intend harm, but all of those statements that don't really offer any comfort or support. I validate what people are experiencing. You grieve because you've loved. When my dad, we watched my father die of lymphoid cancer in 2010. It was traumatic. You grieve because you have loved. And a lot of people during this season, we've seen traumatic deaths. We've seen people die of COVID. We've seen a lot of people experience grief and not being able to have the traditional funeral, not being able to have people come and gather and give that love and support. That's been difficult. It's been challenging. Having graveside services, and with the weather, inclement weather, not being able to bury people and give them what's called maybe a proper burial. So there are a lot of things surrounding grief. So what I tell people is, do allow yourself to grieve, because grief will wait on you, WAIT, and wait on you.
Wow.
And what I mean by that is, if you choose not to deal with it, it won't go away. It will sit right here, like on your chest, until you choose to deal with it. Because what we choose not to deal with will eventually deal with us, and it will wait on you. There have been people that have come to my office, maybe that experienced the loss of a loved one that they never dealt with for a multiplicity of reasons. And I challenged them to deal with it. And the emotion that came out, even if it was 10 years that it happened or several years, grief will wait on you. So it's important to allow yourself to do your grief work, allowing yourself to go through the grieving process, allowing yourself to experience that hurt, that void. It's real.
And you know, Cindy, you talk about it as a process. So just kind of, if for a second, if you could just break down what that process looks like, because I don't think people really understand that it is a process. Just like you talked about, I watched my father, leave this earth as well. And it was a process. And I'm still, now that was almost 22 years ago, and I'm still going through that.
It's a process in terms of when death happens, whether it was anticipatory. I mean, because my dad was dying of cancer, he was terminal. Yes, they told us, this is the amount of time. Still, when you get that telephone call that tells you that your loved one has passed, you go through a myriad of emotions. There's denial. A lot of people experience or express that they feel like they're walking in a fog. You feel like you can't do what you would normally do. Your level of concentration, you experience denial, you experience bargaining. This isn't happening. Those are just different processes. There's anger. Someone said to me today, Miss Williams, I'm a believer, but I'm hurt. I want to ask God why. Those are just some of the processes and cycles that you go through before you get to acceptance. Acceptance of, okay, this is real. And the funeral does help with that. When you attend the funeral, those memorial services, it does help with the process of, my loved one is really not here anymore. And so it doesn't end at the conclusion of the funeral. And those of us who are supporting people who have lost loved ones, please know that it does not end at the funeral. The cycle actually just is beginning, the stages.
Yeah. And Cindy, as we're talking about, you talk about people that come into your presence, and you mentioned about that, the statements that people say. What would you say to people now that have someone that they know that's grieving? People always say, well, I don't really know what to say. What would you tell them that they could do or say to help someone through that process?
I think that you can definitely send a card with a written message. I think you can reach out to people and let them know that you're thinking about them, that you care about them, that you're concerned about them. I think we want to stay away from phrases such as, I know how you feel, because even though you lost your father, and my
Mm-hmm.
father passed on, I can't tell you I know how you feel. You can't
That's
tell me that you know how I feel. So I think just reaching out to people and letting them know I'm reaching out to you because I care. We know that we're quarantined. So some of the things that I would suggest, you know, taking people out, going to visit them, and just sometimes being a listening ear. We talk about the ministry of presence. Sometimes just having that person be present,
mm-hmm.
just to be there. You know what? I just came to sit with you during this time is really, really key.
Yeah, yeah. Cindy, we could talk about grief this whole show because it's so important in the cycle of life.
Yes,
I talk about the cycle of the circle of life. We've lost Chadwick Boseman. As we're
yes,
talking, John Thompson. I'm a big basketball fan.
yes,
So all of these things, and that's a part of grieving. I mean, I'm grieving for them as well, and I know people around the world are. T'Challa, they are grieving T'Challa. But I want to switch to that because when we talk about grief, there's also depression. Depression happens. And with us being in COVID, as I said earlier, some people have been sheltered in place for a
yes.
long time. Some people are still working remotely. And that depression sets in. How do you talk to people and give them some coping skills? What are some of the strategies that they can do at this point if there is someone who is listening right now and saying, I need help?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the one thing with depression, and it depends on the level of depression that we're talking about. Of course, if we're talking about um, major depression may have to be assisted with medication. It depends on if we're talking about a situational depression. You're depressed because you're experiencing depressive symptoms. Depression requires action. What do I
Mm-hmm.
mean when I say that? You've got to do something to combat depression. You've got to get out of the bed. You've got to brush your teeth. You've got to fix your hair. You've got to get up. You've got to actually take some sort of action. You've got to go outside. I'm going outside for what I call the sunshine vitamin D, to get that serotonin going, to get those endorphins. You may need to talk to somebody. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of times people have become depressed because they've internalized everything that's going on. And so talk therapy is extremely impactful when someone is dealing with depression versus them internalizing. Having someone else give you a different perspective about what's going on
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is very impactful. And so
Mm-hmm.
those are the things. Just like I said, it does depend on the type of depression,
And
whether it's situational or major depression. Yes.
right. And Cynthia, just got a question that came through asking, saying, I'm depressed. I don't know how to get up out of the bed. What do I need to do? What kind of help can you give me, Miss Cynthia?
So first of all, I would tell that person, I think my email address will be provided.
Mm-hmm.
I welcome that person to definitely send an email. For those who are depressed, we definitely want to give strategies. We want to give information, talk to them maybe about being able to, there are lots of helplines that you can call that are free of charge.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you would like to talk to a therapist, we can definitely talk about those different options. But I welcome that person to reach out and email me. My email address is provided because, like I said, it does depend on the type of depression that we're talking about. Is it a phase of life depression? Is there a breakup? Did you receive some news? Is it a family situation? Is it a job situation? So, we can talk about depression in a broad band, but
Mm-hmm.
when you get into therapy, then I'm going to help narrow it down to, what is it that you believe is causing those depressive symptoms? What situation has happened? What's occurred? Is it A lot of what's going on in the world today, Tammy, is re-triggering a lot of things for people.
Mm-hmm.
It's re-triggering a lot of things. The being in the house, close proximity, it's bringing up a whole lot of things for people. And I'm saying that based on the calls that I'm getting, and people are talking about, you know what, Miss Williams, I was molested at age 12, and the kinds of things that are coming up now. And I think they're coming up because we're sitting still.
Right.
I think that I termed this the great pause, PAUSC.
Mm-hmm.
During this pause, people are sitting still. A lot of people are doing a lot of self-reflection of their lives, and they're just really going back into some things that have happened in their lives that maybe they never dealt with.
Exactly.
That's what I find is coming up a lot.
Mm-hmm. You're so right, because your mind has a chance to wander. Your mind has a chance to wander. You're busy, as you said, you're by yourself. I mean, here I'm home in my home by myself, but I took the initiative, I guess what you would call initiative. And I said, you know what, girl, you don't have time to sit down and feel sorry for yourself. Now is the time for you to plan. Now is the time for you to rejuvenate, and as I said, get it inspired, ignite yourself, push yourself. And that's what I had to do. But it's harder for some people because, as you said, it just depends on the grade of what the depression is. And if it's medically induced, physically induced, then of course, yes, you have to have medication. One of the other things that strikes me as we're talking about this, Cynthia, is addiction. There are people who are really struggling with addiction, being sheltered in. What do they need to do?
The same thing. I had a patient today that has a substance abuse issue that he admits has been exacerbated by the fact that he's quarantined, by the fact that there's not life as usual, life as normal. And so people are bored. And so whereas Hennessy may have been something to Hennessy and Patron and Cognac and Moscato and Corona may have been those things that they may have used on the weekend. People are reporting that they're using them a lot more. Philly blunts. People know what I'm talking about.
Wow.
People are reporting that, you know what, Miss Williams, maybe I use this just on the weekend, but now that I'm home, I'm finding that it's my go-to even the more.
Wow.
Bored. Sitting at home, not having anything to do, not having that release, especially if you choose, not to gather.
And then as we're talking about that, coupled with all of that, if you have a child or if you have children in your home, now you've come that mountain has just grown. And so while we're talking about that, Cindy, what about the children and depression? Have you seen that in your practice?
As of late, hearing adolescents say to me, Miss Williams, I am stressed out. Yes. Switching from in-person school to virtual, it's been difficult. And so parents, guardians, grandparents, who's ever taking care of the children, please note that they are distressed as well. We as adults are not the only ones who are distressed. And so I think we need to listen when our children are telling us. I was working with a patient today and their child came in crying because they couldn't work the computer, and it was just, it's just a lot. And so we're not the only ones who are stressed. So I think we need to take the time to work with our children, listen to them, pay attention to the signs that they may be exhibiting that they're stressed, help them, navigate through these unprecedented times in these uncharted waters. They need our help also.
They do. And, that brings me to a point. When you talk about that, I have my niece out in California. She's supposed to go back to Howard senior year. She called me crying. Aunt Tammy, I can't go back to school. And mama won't let me. This is when he was saying, you were able to come back, but then after the fact. And I said, my darling, and maybe you tell me if I'm right or wrong. I said, my darling, look at it this way. You're home with your mother. She doesn't have to worry about you in Washington, D.C. She's in California, and you can concentrate. You unfortunately, you're not gonna get to see boyfriend and all those types of things. But let's take the positive out of it. So, Cindy, I'm saying that to say, what do you say to your young adults at this time when they are so stressed out?
I was afforded the opportunity to do to be on a panel working with some young adults that were experiencing the vicissitudes of life. They didn't have the traditional graduation. They didn't get to celebrate like they would have liked to. Some of them had internships that got canceled. Some of them had jobs that got canceled. Wow. So they experienced a tremendous amount of losses back to back. And so I think the first thing that we want to do is, yes, I know we want to jump in and provide the positive, but once again, we got to acknowledge what they're experiencing. That's important. We need to acknowledge what they are experiencing. And you want to do that with anybody. And then help them look at what are some of your options. That's always one of my number one questions with anybody. Because sometimes when you have experienced the vicissitudes of life, you don't see any options. And so if we can, okay, so this has happened, what are your options? Let's brainstorm. And I think once we do that, gets the brain going, gets people start to thinking, okay, so, right, I'm going to have to take my lemons and make some lemonade.
Wow.
And so helping people with that, but acknowledging what they're experiencing and what they feel. Because for a lot of people, they've never experienced loss.
It's true.
Loss is not only about death. Some of them, wow, Miss Williams, this is really tough. I had a wonderful job lined up. What about, I had some young people. Miss Williams, I was on this wonderful internship. They sent me home. Even in my field as a military and family life counselor, those who were working overseas, Bahrain, Dubai, Germany, Italy, they sent you back home. So a lot of people's lives have been uprooted, and you got to be able to address it and deal with it.
That's right. I want to talk with you about therapy, about therapists. I recently saw statistics that there are only about 3% in the whole country, African American, Black and brown therapists. If there are some young people looking right now, what would you say to them about going into the field that you're in now?
The first thing I would say, once again, please feel free to reach out to me via email. I will respond. If this is a field that you believe that you are called to do, I would definitely encourage you to pursue it. Definitely pursue getting your license, whether it's becoming a counselor or in the area of social work. You are needed, because what I'm finding now, based on the calls that I'm getting from companies, people are specifically asking, I would like to sit in front of somebody who looks like me. I can't tell you the number of people who've stated to me, Ms. Williams, me and my family went to a white therapist, and they were good, they were nice. I just didn't feel like they resonated with my experience. I didn't feel like they understood the Black experience. There's something different that you get when you sit in front of someone who looks like you, there's already immediately a different connection, because you feel like, I know you understand. You understand our culture. And when I'm talking to you about certain things, it's not foreign to you because you understand. So if someone's really interested, please reach out to me. I will gladly share any information that I can with you, but I would definitely tell you to pursue. I am really excited. Before I got on this call, there is an opportunity for African American therapists to be on a huge panel to support those of our African American students in college all across the nation.
Wow.
I'm really excited about that. It's a grant that they have received, and they are looking for African American therapists so that they will be able to refer college students. So I'm really excited about that. I'm excited because I think the younger generation gets it. I think they will. I have a therapist, whereas I think our generation wants to hide the fact. It's a secret. I don't want anybody to know that I have a therapist. But I think this generation is saying, you know what? I welcome the fact that I have the opportunity to talk to somebody that can assist me, that can support me during my time. And let me go ahead and say this. I think one of the myths about mental health and about therapy is the goal of therapy, and I'll use this analogy. It's as though as you're going through life, maybe you experience a bump in the road, a relationship breakup, a divorce, a job loss, a death of a loved one. The role when you come to therapy is to give you the tools so you can get back on the road. It's not meant for you to be in therapy for years and years and years. At least that's just not how I approach it. A lot of the work that I do is I want to assist you in getting back on the road to living your best life.
I love that. Getting back on the road to live your best life. And you know, we're talking about this because there are those disparities, and there have been the disparities, not only in health, but also in mental health. Yes. And so it is so important. And Cynthia, I thank you for guiding us and telling us about that, because we need to have more Black and brown therapists. We really do. And I want to be involved and hope to hear more about what you're talking about as far as this panel, because folks, this is important stuff. One other thing that, you know, that I want to address now, there was a question about caregiving. What do you have to say to somebody who is challenged at this point with caregiving right now where we are?
That's a good question. And I knew that question was coming. So I actually interviewed a couple of caregivers this week.
Oh, wonderful.
And I asked them, what would you like for me to share? Because you're actually in the role of a caregiver. And I thought what they said was profound. A lot of times, caregivers, we've known caregivers to pass away prior to the people they've even been taking care of. So this caregiver said to me, get help. I said, what do you mean? She said, make certain that you get some help. Don't feel that you have to shoulder and carry that all alone. Get you some help. There are a lot of resources. Tap into those resources so that you can get a break. Because a lot of times the caregiver is so self-absorbed in giving that care they don't wind up caring for themselves. And I just thought that that was profound, because I think what's going to happen is you're going to have to get rid of some of that guilt that you're carrying.
Mm.
You're going to have to release that guilt that says to you, nope, I need to do it. No, you can't do it all.
Wow.
If your family members are not assisting, there are other resources. Tap into those other resources, get you some help. Don't be afraid to reach out and say, I need somebody to come and maybe sit, with my loved one for 2 to 3 hours so I can get a break.
Mm-hmm. And Cindy, as you're talking about that, we are in this pandemic and with COVID going on, and I'm talking about the nursing homes, the assisted living homes. I can't even see my Aunt Cindy. I was able to kind of do a drive-through,
Right.
but you're not able to hug. You're not able to go see about your loved ones. And that's a big thing that's going on now that also is causing a lot of depression in people, a lot of anxiety. As you would say. And so what do you say to those folks? What do you say to them right now?
Well, I think when they, that's also a form of grief.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember I experienced that when I got sick, the latter part of March, and I couldn't breathe, and I got rushed to the hospital. And anybody who knows my husband, he was wanting to run right down the hall, but there was a police officer right there to say, sorry, you got to go back to your car. That's difficult when you have a loved one that's in the hospital or in the nursing facility. You're not able to touch them, and heaven forbid if they pass away. That's grief. Once again, you have to acknowledge, you have to do the best that you can. You can ask the doctor, you can make the request. Some living facilities are saying, you can, like you said, you can do the drive-by or the FaceTime, and all you can do is find out what it is you can do and do that. And know that that's going to create grief.
Yeah.
It's going to create heartache.
It is.
It's going to create heartache.
It is. Cindy, there's so many topics. We wanted to get a lot in. What's on your mind matters. There's a question about racial injustice. And the question is, why? And what can I do?
It would take us the rest of the night to answer why we have racial injustice.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that there has got to be a transformation of people's heart and thinking. I think that the way that you conduct yourself is predicated upon what your belief system is. So until that changes, in a whole lot of areas, it's only then that we will be on the road to eradicating racism. It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's heart-wrenching. And this is why I'm saying, with all of these things going on, I'm screaming to our African American community. We need to come off mute. We internalize a whole lot. We need to get support for some of the things that we have experienced, some of the trauma that we watch. I don't know about anybody else, but these images on television cause me a lot of trepidation, a lot. And I know a lot of people echo my sentiments. Mm-hmm. What can you do?
Yeah.
There's a lot you can do. The first thing is, like you said, we need to vote. We've got to vote. We've got to also start making differences in our homes about what we teach, in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in our churches, in our schools. I think that we can start to make a difference, one situation at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is not going to be afforded a platform to speak to the multitudes. But I think wherever it is you are, when a situation occurs, we've got to come off mute.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
We've got to hashtag unmute.
Yeah. And you know, that's what, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's just, it just keeps reminding me of your story, your community. We've got to take care of our communities. We've got to get out of there. I don't care if you're white, brown, yellow, black, yellow, green. We've got to take care of our communities. And I hear what you're saying. Get off mute. Speak up. Now is the time to speak up. Cindy, it dawned on me as I've been talking to you. I've been, you know, there's a therapist who's looking. And the question is, as a therapist, how are you able to release?
Years ago, when I was the director of a substance abuse program in the detention center, and I started hearing some of the most unfathomable stories that I've ever heard, I knew then I had to come home and pray. And I just laid before the Lord and I said, you have gifted me to do this work, but you have got to create in me a release valve, unless I'm going to go crazy. Mm-hmm. And that was a request I personally took to the Lord, because if you internalize everything that you hear, you won't be any good. And so to the therapists who are listening, remember what your role is and what your role isn't. I like what one of my colleagues, because I'm licensed in South Carolina and North Carolina, I like what she said. She said, you know what? I've had to learn my role is, my patient is driving the Mercedes. I'm in the passenger seat. Wow. It's not my role to take over the wheel and tell them what to do. I can assist. I can guide. I can give suggestions, but they're driving. And so what has helped me is I have a relationship with the Lord. I don't try to do this work day to day without him. But he has also allowed me to have a release valve so that I can be effective in what I do. Mm-hmm. And I'm very clear about what my role is and what it is not.
Wow. So in other words, when we get off, you get off of this right now, this television show, you don't have any more shows to do and no more Zooms to do. You're going to just chill.
I'm going to just chill.
Well, you know what? And that's not only just for therapists. As I'm listening to you, if anybody is constantly looking at the news, constantly CNN, MSNBC, CBS, all of them, if you are constantly looking at the news like that, that you internalize all of that.
Exactly. And so you definitely want to, one of my suggestions is, please, some people have participated in social media and become so irate and gotten in, you know, social media wars. Put those social media and the news on a diet, like we need to do with those bags of Lay's potato chips and bags of cookies, whole buckets of chicken. Put it on a diet. Make a determination about the amount of time you're going to spend on it. That's what I do. I say, you know what? I'm going to do social media for 30 minutes, but after that, when that buzzer goes off, that's it. Same thing with the news. Day in and day out, hour after hour. It's not good for your psyche. It's telling your brain that these things are reoccurring. It's not good for your psyche.
That's right. So
definitely self-care, putting those items on a diet, the news and the social media. Yes.
All right. Well, you heard it right here. Cynthia, one other thing that I want to talk about, and this is about people who need support, who need help. There's such a thing as, and I learned this from my therapist, EAP, insurance. Let's talk about that.
Sure. So everyone who is employed, unless you are working with a mom and pop company, and even some of them, they have a benefit that is called EAP. EAP, EAP, EAP. Write that down, please. The Employee Assistance Program. It is a benefit that your company provides. It is for you. It is for anyone in your family. It is complimentary. It is a benefit. It's confidential. Nothing gets reported to your job. Your company has paid another company that's going to reimburse the therapist. Harris Teeter has it. Boeing, Robert Bosch, the Citadel, the College of Charleston, Trident Tech, most factories, your stores, those of you who work in stores, those of you who work in banks. Most companies offer this. Harass your human resource representative. A lot of times people have told me, Ms. Williams, we don't have it. Yes, you do. Sometimes your HR person is not on top of their game. Do your homework, ask. Why is that important? Because, and especially during the cities of Charleston, the county of Charleston, the different counties, they offer the Employee Assistance Program. So you can get counseling for free, you and everyone that's in your immediate family. If your company does not have the Employee Assistance Program and you have insurance, then you will pay the copay. And your therapist, if they accept insurance, will bill the insurance company for the remainder. So your copay may range anywhere from $15 up to $30, $35. And then the therapist, if they accept insurance, will pay the remaining. But I really want everyone, so many people call me and say, how much is it? And I'll say, where do you work? And they're like, why do you want to know where I work? I said, because 97% of the companies, and most people have never heard of it.
Wow.
The Employee Assistance Program. Yeah. Those persons who are in the military, you can contact Military One Source and get 12 free sessions. You can contact Center Stone. You can get a referral through TRICARE. So there are a lot of options. We've got to do our homework. There are a lot of options available. Some people have Medicaid.
Oh, wow. And, we just got a question. Somebody asked about, I'm self-pay. I don't have any insurance. What does that range look like for me to get support for mental health?
Excellent question. So what I really prefer is for somebody to, if self-pay is their situation, I really prefer for people to call and just let's have a discussion. I will tell you what the average rate is, but if someone says, you know what, Ms. Williams, based on self-pay, this is the amount that I'm able to pay. We call it sliding fee scale. Okay. And so you just need to ask, I can't speak for all of the therapists, but once again, you might have to do your homework. You might have to contact a couple of people who may say, well, I don't accept insurance, or I do, or yes, we can do self-pay. So you just have to ask.
Yeah. And I'm asking that question because I know there are folks who are looking and it's clicking and somebody is saying, I need help. What can I do? What do I need to do? And I may not be able to afford it. But now, since you've talked about it, and folks, I'm telling you from experience, using your EAP, using your insurance, if you have insurance, is going to help you get on the road back to where you need to be, to wholeness. And that's what Miss Cynthia Washington Williams is talking with us about today. Cindy, the one of the things that I always ask everybody on the show is, describe in 3 words what you would want people to know about mental health, the importance of getting help.
It's important. Counseling is not a curse word. Don't knock it if you have not tried it.
Wow. Don't knock it if you have not tried it. I like that. I like that. And I'm telling you folks, I've got a therapist. If you need one, please reach out and you can get in touch with you. How, Cynthia?
Definitely. You can email me at cindy@comcast.net and I will respond.
Okay. Now, Cindy, the last thing I want to ask you, and I know we have a couple of minutes left, from all of this that we've talked about, because we've covered a potpourri of topics, what do you want viewers to pull away from this interview?
That the life experiences that you have, those that may have traumatized you, those vicissitudes of life experiences that you have that have hurt you, that you've internalized, when you don't process them, when you don't get the support that you need, you wind up bleeding on people. You wind up bleeding and leaking. The issues that you choose not to deal with are going to show up. What you eventually do not address will eventually address you, and maybe not in such a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
Take the courage, take that step to say, you know what, I think I just need to talk to somebody. Take that step. I can't tell you how many people have said to me, I didn't want to come. I'm thinking a lot of the men, some of the comments that the men have said. Ms. Williams, I didn't want to come. I had one man who told me, he said, Miss, you have another opening tomorrow. This is the bomb.com. And it's all because we have the wrong thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have people telling us, oh, you don't need to do that. Be mindful of who's in your tribe and the people, what's going on with them that they're saying that. I don't know. So I really want people to take away that there are some great benefits. Will it fix everything that's going on in your life? No. But remember what I said. The goal is you have pulled off on the side of the road. The goal is for you to get back to wholeness so you can get back on the road to life and living your best life. So if someone is saying to you, I think you will benefit from talking to somebody, go do it. What's the worst thing that can happen?
Mm-hmm. Right. I love what you said. You said don't knock it if you hadn't tried it. You know, if you haven't tried anything, how are you going to know how it's going to turn out? I love that, Cynthia. You know, it's always great to talk with you. I hope that you will come back on the show and we'll talk some more. I mean, folks, we covered a lot. We covered a wide range. I wanted to do that because we had so many different types of questions. So Cynthia, again, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us on the show today. Last words that you'd like to say, Cynthia?
I'd like to encourage those therapists. Definitely get your license. It'll be worth it. There is a world that needs you. And for those who are on the edge, you're experiencing some family issues, communication issues, you're thinking about getting married, you're having some parenting issues, you just know that things with you are not right, I would definitely encourage you to reach out. Reach out, get the EAP information, or utilize your insurance. Do it for yourself. You're worth it. You're worth it.
And you're worth it. Cynthia Washington Williams, mental health expert. I want to thank you again. I mean, my sister, it's always great to talk with you. And yes, she will be coming back. The way you can get in touch with Cynthia is you can go to her email, Cindy@Comcast.net. Right, Cindy?
That's correct.
All right, Miss Cynthia Washington Williams. Listen, please take care of yourself and you get some rest, my friend. Please. Okay. Thanks for joining the show, Cindy. Take care. Tell my brother I said hi.
I will. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you to the listeners and the viewers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Listen, folks, what's on your mind matters. I hope you enjoyed the show. I did. I got a lot out of it. I mean, what she said about don't knock it if you haven't tried it. And you want to get back on the road to wholeness. You've been on the side of the road. You want to get back on that road so you can live your best life. That's what we all want to do, right? Live our best life. I tell you what, I have been so blessed by the messages, and thank you for the questions that we received for tonight. Next week, we're going to be talking with an entrepreneur. She's a philanthropist. She's in Atlanta. She has a wonderful candle making company. I've known her for years. And I'm telling you, when you want to do what God has put inside of you and he gives you that opportunity, he gives you that vision, and it's time for you to move forward, you've got to do it. She's got a great story to tell us. Kim Brode of Flirty Wick is going to join us next Thursday. So I hope you're going to be right here with us next week. Again, I want to remind you, vote. You heard Cynthia Washington Williams say it as well. We've got to get out and vote. And while we're doing that, there's so many things that we need to do to be responsible. And that is one of the things, social distancing. Another thing is washing your hands for the 20 seconds. And more importantly, you want to wear your mask. So, I mean, there's so many things that we can do right now, folks. And I'm glad that I had the chance to speak with Cynthia today and all the people that I've had on the show thus far. I want you to continue to send your unique stories to me because I want to hear it. I want to hear your story. I want to hear what's happening in your community. And you can do that by going to info@TammyMcCoughtry.com. All right. If you have any questions, anything you want to ask me, listen, I'm here and I'm enjoying this time with you. So remember, take care of yourself. You have a story. You have a unique story. You live in a great community. And so I want to hear from you. I want you to wear your mask. Please wear your mask. And until the next time, take care of yourself. Bye-bye.